Have you ever been told not to drink water with meals because it will dilute your stomach acid or ruin digestion? It sounds logical and it's repeated a lot, especially in gut health conversations. But here's the real question. If water actually diluted digestion the way that people claim, then how does digestion work at all? Because every major digestive process, protein, carbohydrate, and fat breakdown depend on water at the chemical level. So today, I want to walk you through the physiology, explain where this idea came from, and show you why drinking water with meals isn't the problem, especially if you're dealing with bloating or SIBO. I'm often asked by patients and others alike whether drinking water with meals dilutes digestive enzymes or stomach acid and whether that could contribute to digestive issues like bloating or SIBO. On the surface, it sounds reasonable. After all, drinking water sounds like it would be diluting your digestive secretions like acid and making it weaker. But when you actually understand how digestion works, this claim falls apart. Let's begin our overview of digestion by stating a simple fact about the human body. It's highly resilient and highly adaptable, and that includes digestion. Digestion is not a passive process. It's not fragile. It can handle disruptions. So drinking something as basic as water, that's not going to create a significant disturbance in your digestive process. And when you look at digestion through the lens of being adaptive, regulated, in a chemistry-driven system, you begin to understand how efficient it can be at handling changes in volume, composition of food, and even hydration status. It's intended to be able to adapt to those shifts. The stomach simply doesn't receive food and hope for the best. It responds to that food. And acid secretion is going to adjust as a byproduct of this. Enzyme release adapts, and your motility is also going to change based on what enters the system. And all of this together means that if water was capable of diluting digestion, the system would fail routinely. But we don't see that happens because fluid, specifically water, is built into every stage of the digestive process. And that leads us up to the chemistry. But to understand why the dilution myth doesn't hold up, you really have to look at what digestion actually is at the fundamental level. Digestion is not just a mechanical process. It's also a chemical transformation. For food to move from the form that we eat it in to the form that the body can actually absorb in the small intestine, chemical bonds have to be broken. And that process, regardless of what macronutrient you're referring to, proteins, fats, or carbohydrates, depends on what is known as hydrolysis. To break that name down, that means that water is breaking. The water is breaking bonds here. So how does that apply to the macronutrients? Well, let's look at these. To begin with, proteins. Proteins are broken down into individual amino acids by cleaving peptide bonds. So these longer strands of peptides are broken down into smaller strands so that we can assimilate those. That bond cleavage, that breaking apart, which we call hydrolysis, depends on water. That's right, water is actually required for this. What about carbohydrates? Disaccharides and polysaccharides, those also have to be hydrolyzed into absorbable monosaccharides. So to say that differently, longer strands of carbohydrates have to be broken into very small carbohydrates for those to be assimilated. Again, water is required. Well, what about the last major macronutrient, fats? Dietary fats are primarily in the form of triglycerides. Lipases, which is a digestive enzyme from the pancreas, they hydrolyze, you see that word again, they hydrolyze these fatty acids off of the glycerol backbone, and when that happens, you get these free fatty acids that are produced, and sometimes monoglycerides. But the point is that you're taking a larger triglyceride and you're breaking it into its fragments so that those can be assimilated. But once more, we find that water is required in this process. So you'll note here water is not even optional, it's required. And it's certainly not antagonistic or problematic to digestion. Now, I hear some of you already asking, what about the stomach acid, the hydrochloric acid? Aren't we diluting hydrochloric acid? The gastric acid, stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, all saying the same thing, that operates at an extremely low pH. On the pH scale of 1 to 14, we're down to 1 to 2 in regards to what that pH level is. That's extremely acidic. So when you drink water, digestion does not shut down. Your acid secretion adapts because your pH is very tightly regulated. The stomach is dynamic and it responds in a dynamic way. Recall earlier I said that the composition of food, the volume of food, the hydration status, the stomach and the entire digestive process can adapt to all of that. A temporary volume increase does not neutralize digestion or the digestive secretions. There is no significant dilution effect that takes place here. And even if you said, well, isn't there some? It's very temporary and transient, but that's if at all. And that's a big if. Now, if this information that I'm sharing with you already starts to feel different than what you've been told, and it's starting to reframe how you think about digestion, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. These are the kinds of conversations that we have around here. Now, if you and I haven't met before, I'm Dr. Arland Hill. I'm both a clinician and a rancher. And that gives me a unique perspective because it allows me to see the physiology and the food. And that perspective matters because digestion, that's not a process that's happening in isolation, as you can tell from this conversation today. Therefore, the physiology and the food, those two can't be separated. Let's delve into why this matters if you have SIBO. This is especially important in the SIBO conversation and scenarios like that where the digestive secretions are suboptimal. Remember, stomach acid is not just about digesting food, it's also a protection against invasions against microorganisms that are moving through the stomach and small intestine, and therefore it acts to prevent bacterial overgrowth, and not just bacteria. It could be fungus and other microorganisms as well. The point here is that water does not dilute that protective process. Your stomach acid, your bile, your pancreatic enzymes, those are all unaffected. And if someone has impaired acid production or their vagus nerve that stimulates and it works with these secretions is not active, there's a weak signaling process, that's the issue. It's not the problem that water was consumed with the meal. Water consumption with food does not contribute to a poor digestive outcome, and nor does it exacerbate presentations like SIBO. That is a dysfunctional digestive system is what causes that. It has nothing to do with consuming water as part of a meal. So the takeaway is consume water with the food to the point that you feel satisfied, and don't go out of your way to underconsume or, to the opposite end, overconsume water. Just consume what you need and what feels good to you as a part of that meal. So if drinking water with meals causes symptoms, that's information, but it's not the mechanism. Instead of avoiding water, we should be asking, why isn't digestive function responding the way that it should? And if this video has reframed how you think about digestion as a whole, you'll want to watch the next video where we talk about what actually weakens the digestive function and how to restore it.